The silence after the cut studio lights dimmed, not because the scene was over, but because the energy in the room had changed. They had been shooting for almost 9 hours straight. Everyone was tired. Tempers were short. The voice had grown louder, sharper. The crew, once full of jokes and smiles, now moved like shadows, quick, quiet. Ana de Armas stood at her mark, waiting for the cue. It was a difficult scene, emotional, delicate. Her character was meant to break down, not with loud sobs or screaming, but with the kind of quiet pain that stays under the skin. It's a kind that hurts more because it doesn't show. The cameras rolled. The silence pressed in. Ana took a breath. Her eyes glistened, opened her mouth to deliver her first line. Cut. The director yelled. Frustrated, everyone froze. Ana blinked, confused. Did I do something wrong? The director didn't answer, just waved a hand and barked to the crew. Reset the lights. Again from the top. She stepped back to her mark, her heart starting to race again, and again, and again. The 5th time, director didn't say cut. He shouted, can someone tell her how to cry properly? We're burning daylight. Some people chuckled, softly. Others looked down, pretending to adjust equipment. Ana's lips parted, her face still in character. But her spirit wavered. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can do it again. The director walked over, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. He leaned in, his voice low but sharp like glass. You've had enough chances. If you can't find the emotion, don't ruin the whole day. We'll use a body double if we have to. Keanu Reeves was sitting quietly nearby, watching the monitor. He hadn't said a word all morning, out of respect for the director's process. But now, his eyes narrowed. He could see the pain forming behind Ana's steady face. He could see how her shoulders tensed, how her hands were curled into her sleeves like she was trying not to disappear. He stood, walked toward the set. The room didn't notice at first. But then, silence fell again. People turned. Ana was still standing on her mark, eyes glossy but focused. The director turned around, ready to yell at whoever was interrupting. What now? He snapped. Then saw it was Keanu. Keanu stopped in front of Ana. His voice was calm, steady. That wasn't her fault. The director blinked. Excuse me? The missed cue? The lighting reset? The mic buzz? That was me. I wasn't where I was supposed to be in the scene. A few crew members exchanged glances. They knew the truth. Keanu had been there, exactly on time. Exactly. Where he was needed, he always was. The director frowned. You weren't even in this shot. Still, Keanu said softly, I messed up. She shouldn't be blamed for my mistake. Ana looked at him, stunned. The director scoffed. Keanu, with all respect, then show her some. Keanu interrupted gently. Respect, I mean. His. The voice wasn't angry. There was no shouting, no performance. Just quiet words in a room that had forgotten how to be kind. A long pause followed. The director looked around and saw eyes watching. Eyes that weren't just crew. Eyes that were. Human. Tired. Uncertain. Some were embarrassed. Others inspired. Finally, the director sighed, pinched the bridge of his nose, and waved his hand again. Fine. Take 5. Ana stepped off the mark slowly, like she wasn't sure if she was floating or falling. Her hands trembled. She sat on a wooden box near the camera rig and didn't speak. Keanu sat beside her. Without asking, neither said anything for a long moment. Then she whispered, Why did you do that? Because you didn't deserve what he said. You lied. Keanu looked at her, his voice still soft. Sometimes peace is worth more than pride. I can handle being blamed. You're already carrying enough. Ana turned her head away, hiding the tear that slipped down her cheek. The sound of the set around them softened, footsteps, laughter returning slowly. The moment had passed, but it left a mark that would stay longer than any take. As the sun began to set outside the large windows of the studio, the light changed. It touched Ana's face like an apology, like hope. And for the first time all day, she felt like maybe someone had seen her. Not just the actress, not just the role, but her, and it mattered. The next day on set felt different. Not louder, Not Commergis different. Like the air itself was thinking. Like everyone was walking through something unseen, but deeply felt. Anna came in early, earlier than usual. She didn't want to, but sleep had escaped her the night before. Her mind kept replaying the moment. Not the director's anger, not the failed takes, but the moment Keanu stood up. The way his voice stayed low when he defended her. The way he absorbed the blame like a shield. She hadn't thanked him? Not really. Keanu was already on set when she arrived. He was by the coffee table, pouring a drink for the boom operator who had sprained his ankle last week. No cameras were rolling. No one was watching. He just did it because it felt right. Anna stood at a distance, unsure how to walk up. Unsure what to say. But he looked over and smiled gently, like he'd been waiting without expecting. "You came early," he said. "Couldn't sleep," she replied. Keanu nodded. "Me neither." They both sat on a wooden bench tucked behind the props trailer, where the lights didn't reach and the city's sounds felt far away. Anna looked down at her hands. "You shouldn't have taken the blame. It wasn't fair to you." Maybe, Keanu said, but it made people pause. Sometimes that's all you need to shift the direction of a day. Anna frowned gently. "Why do you do that?" "What?" "The burden. Even when it isn't yours." Keanu looked out at the sky. It was turning from soft gray to morning gold. "Because I've had days where I wished someone would have done that for me." Anna didn't speak. Her throat tightened. Just then, the first assistant director called out from the main set. It was time. As they walked back together, something was different. Not in them, but around them. The set was quieter, not tense more. Respectful. The camera operator nodded gently at Anna. The makeup artist smiled and didn't say anything, but dabbed her cheek a little more carefully. Even the director, who usually stayed locked behind the monitor, stepped forward and said, "Let's take it slow today." Anna stepped to her mark. The scene was ready again, the emotional one. The one she had broken down trying to do yesterday, but this time, when the cameras rolled. She didn't just act the pain, she felt something new behind it. Support, presence, not just from Keanu, who stood just off frame like a steady heartbeat, but from the whole team. And something inside her opened like a window, letting in air when she delivered the lines. Her voice cracked not because she forced it, but because it was real. The moment passed. A silence lingered. The crew held their breath, then cut. The director said softly. He stood up. Walked slowly toward Anna. She braced herself. He reached out and touched her shoulder lightly. "That was beautiful," he said, and walked away. The crew clapped once, softly. Not like a celebration, but like a thank you. Anna turned and saw Keanu. He wasn't smiling. He was just present, steady, like he always had been. "Thank you," she whispered. Keanu nodded once. "You found it." That afternoon, during lunch break, something unexpected happened. One of the background actors, a young woman who hadn't spoken much before, came up to Anna and said, "I saw what happened yesterday. And today, I just wanted to say it gave me hope. It's like maybe this place doesn't have to break people." Anna blinked, surprised. She nodded, thanked her, then watched as the girl walked away. The ripple had started. Not loud, not fast. But real kindness had moved something, and people had noticed. 2 days later, filming moved to a new location. An old theater downtown. The stage creaked with age, and the red velvet curtains smelled faintly of dust and time. The space had history. 8. People said the walls still remembered the echoes of past. Performers Anna felt nervous again. The scene today was personal, not just for the character, but for her. It was about disappointment, about losing a parent's approval, about carrying shame that wasn't yours. She had avoided this script for weeks before, saying yes. Now she had to live it in front of everyone. Keanu noticed something in her steps. She walked slower that morning, kept her hands in her coat pockets. Even indoors. Her usual soft smile didn't show. During rehearsal, she missed a line. "Cut," the director said, but not angrily this time. "Take a breath, Anna." She nodded, stepping off the stage and sitting on the edge of it. Her feet dangled like a child's. Keanu joined her without speaking. Didn't ask what was wrong. Didn't pry. He just sat beside her, quiet. After a while, she said, "It's not just the scene. Or the memory it brings up." He waited. "I used to cry like that, silent, hoping someone would notice. They just told me to toughen up." Keanu looked ahead, not at her. "Me too." She turned her head. "Really?" He nodded. "People think if you're quiet, you're fine. But sometimes silence is the loudest cry." A long moment passed. Anna looked at him closely. "You carry a lot, don't you?" Keanu smiled gently. "Only what I choose to." "What do you choose today?" He turned and finally met her eyes. "To be here. With you?" Her breath caught. Not because it was romantic. It wasn't. It was something deeper. Something that made her feel safe. When they did the scene again, the director didn't say action. He just nodded. Something magical happened. Anna stood center stage, her voice low, her eyes steady. The lines didn't feel like words anymore. They were truths, lived, shared. Halfway through, her voice cracked. A tear rolled down her cheek, and from the shadows, Keanu whispered gently, "Keep going." It wasn't part of the script, but it fit. Anna took a shaky breath, finished the scene. Silence then. Applause, not loud. Just real. And later that evening, something even more surprising happened. The director came to Anna's trailer and knocked. He looked uncomfortable, like the words he had to say were heavy in his throat. "I owe you an apology," said. Anna stood frozen. "For what?" "For the other day. For how I spoke. For forgetting you're a person, not just a performance." "Anna." "Didn't know what to say?" The director added. "Keanu reminded me. Not with words, but with how he carries himself. I forgot that kindness leads better than pressure." He left before she could respond. Inside, she sat on the edge of her seat and cried. Not because she was hurt, but because she finally felt seen. Truly seen. The next morning, a handwritten note appeared on her script. It read, "You are not the mistake. You are the story." Keisha held the note to her chest, smiled, and whispered, "Thank you." And somewhere deep inside, the shame began to loosen its grip. The next week was full of night shoots. The cast and crew moved to an outdoor location, an empty parking lot lit by giant studio lights. With cold winds sweeping through the space like an unseen guest, the scene was difficult, full of shouting, fake rain, and timed explosions. It was nothing like the emotional scenes they had just filmed, but somehow it felt heavier, harder, not because of the acting, but because something had shifted behind the camera. Rumors had started, not cruel ones, just whispers. Some people were wondering why Keanu was always near Anna, why he always stood beside her during breaks, why he seemed more protective lately. Someone joked that she was getting special treatment. Another said, if anyone else messed up a take like she did last week, they'd be off the project. Anna heard them. She didn't react, but it cut deep. Keanu noticed the change in her right away, how she avoided eye contact, how she stayed near the edge of the set, how she didn't touch her coffee during breaks. He waited until a quiet moment. They were sitting beside a portable heater, both wrapped in coats, watching the crew prep the next setup. "They're talking about me," Ina said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Keanu didn't ask who. He just said, "Let them. Doesn't it bother you?" She looked at him, really looked. "They think you're giving me a pass. It's like I didn't earn my place here." "You did," Keanu said. "You earned every second of it." Then, "Why does it feel like I'm carrying a weight I can't explain?" He thought for a moment, then replied, "Because when someone throws stones, even if they miss, the sound stays in your ears." Anna looked away. Her eyes watered, but she blinked. "Fast, you know," Keanu added. "When I first started out, they said I was too quiet. Too soft? They said I couldn't lead a film. Too gentle. Too slow." She looked back at him. "But I didn't change to fit the noise," he said. "I just kept showing up." "How? By remembering who I was before they told me who to be?" Anna held that thought like a fragile thing in her palm. Later that night, the director called for one final take. Fake rain poured from the rig. The scene was loud. Fire, sirens, chaos. Anna had to run toward Keanu, fall to her knees and scream, raw, desperate, broken. The first take didn't land. Her voice cracked too early. The second take went off dash timing. By the third, she stood shaking. In the rain, drenched and tired, her breath coming out in sharp gasps. "Let's reset." The director yelled, "We'll go again." Anna turned slowly, water dripping from her hair, face pale. She didn't move. The crew looked around, unsure. Then Keanu walked into the rain, without waiting for anyone. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her. "Roll camera," the director said quickly. Sensing something real was about to happen, Keanu looked at Anna and said quietly, "Remember who you were." Her lips trembled. Before the noise, he added. Anna nodded once. The smallest movement, and then she screamed. Not the way they rehearsed. It's not the scripted line. She screamed everything that had built up. Every bruise on her confidence. Every word she swallowed. Every time someone doubted her. When she dropped to her knees, it wasn't acting, it was truth. When the scene ended, the entire set was frozen. Silence then, applause, not just polite clapping. Real, deep, respectful, the director stepped forward, soaked and stunned. "We got it," he whispered. "We really got it." Anna looked up, rain still falling. Eyes red but proud, and Keanu was still there, standing beside her, silent, steady, just like always. What the crew didn't see was later that night, Anna sat in her trailer, alone, holding a hot mug between her hands. Oh, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled without forcing it, because now she knew it didn't matter what they whispered. She had earned her place, and someone good had stood beside her until she saw it for herself. The interview that shook the room's shoot was nearly complete. Only 2 major scenes remained, and both were set indoors. The crew felt the pressure, but also a kind of pride. They knew they were part of something special now, something deeper than just a film. Anna could feel it too. For the first time in her career, she wasn't pretending to be strong on the outside while doubting herself inside. She was changing, slowly, gently, but surely. But Hollywood doesn't always allow a quiet moment to stay quiet. On the final Friday before the wrap, a well-known entertainment outlet arrived on set. They came to interview the main cast, including Keanu and Anna. For a behind-the-scenes special, there were cameras, microphones, lights, makeup touch-ups, and a publicist hovering nearby at all times. Keanu didn't like interviews. Not because he disliked questions, but because he believed the real story always lived off camera. But still, he agreed, for Anna's sake. The host smiled wide and spoke fast, cracking jokes and asking rapid-fire questions. Everything seemed fine until the tone shifted. They were live on the studio's promotional live stream when the host leaned forward toward Anna and asked with a smirk, "So Anna, real talk, do you think you'd be doing this well if Keanu hadn't stepped in? For you that day on set?" The question hit like a slap. The room went still. Some laughed nervously. Others pretended not to hear it. Anna froze, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes stared at the table between them, because the host added, chuckling, "Word is you." Kinda fell apart, and he saved the day. Akana's throat tightened. Her heart beat louder than the hum of the lights, but before she could answer, Keanu leaned forward. His voice was calm, slow, firm. "That's not a fair question," he said. The host blinked. "No, you weren't," Keanu interrupted gently. "You were implying that her strength depends on someone else's kindness. And I won't let that pass." Anna looked at him, eyes wide. Keanu continued. She didn't fall apart. She was carrying something no one else saw. And when people blamed her, they were wrong. "I stepped in because I knew the truth. And the truth is, she's one of the strongest people I've ever worked with." The host went silent. The live stream cut to a quick break. The interview was over. Anna sat in the quiet studio room, her breath shaky. She hadn't spoken, but something inside her had healed. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly after the cameras left. "Yes," Keanu replied. I did. You always defend me. Not because you need it, he said, but because it reminds others to look closer. Anna turned to him, her eyes filled with emotion. I used to think silence was safety, but now I think it's just waiting. Waiting for someone to speak up. Keanu nodded. And now you're ready to speak too. Later that night, a clip of the interview went viral. But not because it was dramatic, because it was honest. People online praised Keanu's words. But more than that, they praised Anna's silence. The strength in her stillness. The courage in not defending herself with noise, but with presence. By the next morning, the entire crew had seen it. When Anna walked into set, something unexpected happened. Every crew member stood up, not because anyone told them to, but because they respected her. And finally, she felt it was real. The final day of filming came like the end of a long, quiet journey. It was a Sunday morning, and the sun was gentle over the soundstage windows. Everything was calm, no rush, no shouting, no last-minute panic. The crew moved with quiet focus, as if they knew this day mattered more than usual. Anna arrived before anyone else. She stood outside the studio doors for a few minutes, holding a warm coffee in both hands, watching her breath rise in the morning air. She wasn't nervous today. She felt something better. Peace. The final scene was simple. Her character sits alone on a bench after everything has fallen apart. The camera stays on her for a long time. No dialogue, no cuts, just silence and emotion. Keanu's character walks by, stops, sits beside her, says nothing. They both look out at the sky, and that's it. The ending is open. Quiet, brave Anna. Had read it a dozen times, but today it felt different. It felt like her own story. On set, the lights were soft. The bench was placed perfectly under a beam of morning light. Everything was still. Keanu arrived with the same calm presence he always carried. He walked up beside Anna, gave her a soft nod, and sat beside her in silence. The director gave a small wave. Roll camera. Anna sat on the bench, and the world fell away. She didn't act. She just breathed. She let the memory of everything come. Back the early mornings, the fear, the rumors, the tears. The moment Keanu took the blame, the quiet words. The long nights she doubted herself, and how she rose anyway. Her eyes filled slowly. Odd. She didn't cry. She just looked ahead, steady. Keanu walked into frame, sat beside her. Didn't speak, and they stayed like that. The camera rolled, the entire crew stood silent. After a long moment, the director's voice broke the stillness. Cut. No one moved. Then he added softly, "That's a wrap." Some people clapped. Some, DIDN single quotes, many just stood still, watching something they knew they'd never forget. Anna stood up slowly. Someone handed her a towel. Someone else offered a smile. But she looked for one person, Keanu. He was already walking toward her, calm as always. She didn't speak at first. Then she whispered, "Thank you for what?" He asked gently, "For showing me who I was before." "I knew." He smiled. "You were always that person. They just waited until you saw her." They didn't hug. They didn't need to. Their silence had become their language. A few days later, the film was screened for a private audience studio. Heads, editors, producers, and something rare happened. They cried. The same executives who usually looked for numbers and market value cried. One of them said, "This isn't just a film, it's a reminder." Another added, "That girl, she carried the entire story." Didn't hear those words in the room, but she didn't need to. She already knew. After the screening, a young intern approached her, barely 20. Wide eyes, shaking hands. "Miss Anna," she said softly, "when you sat on that bench, I felt like it was me." Anna smiled, took the girl's hand, and said, "That's because it was all of us." The movie went on to do well. Very well, but the best thing wasn't the awards or the reviews. It was what happened between the scenes. The way a man stood up and said it was me. When a WASN single quotes, the way kindness whispered louder than power, and the way a woman learned. She didn't need saving, just space to rise. Keanu disappeared after the premiere, as he often did. But one day, months later, Anna received a small package. No note, just a single folded paper inside. On it were 7 handwritten words. You were never the mistake. Remember that Anna smiled through tears and whispered to herself, I will.